Ever booked an Airbnb and felt a little lost? Like you're wandering around a foreign city, clutching your phone, wondering if you're even at the right place? Or maybe you've had a question about the Wi-Fi, the check-in process, or even just the best local coffee shop, but weren't quite sure how to reach out to your host? You're not alone. Communication is key to a smooth Airbnb experience, and in this video, we're going to break down everything you need to know about communicating effectively with your Airbnb host. Think about it. Your Airbnb host isn't just providing a place to stay. They're often your local guide, your point of contact, and the key to unlocking a truly memorable trip. Whether it's confirming arrival details, asking for recommendations, or addressing a small issue, clear communication can make all the difference. But how do you navigate this communication effectively? What are the best practices, and what should you avoid? That's what we're diving into today. Before we jump into the specifics, let's understand why good communication is so crucial. Firstly, it builds trust. By establishing a clear line of communication from the start, you create a sense of rapport with your host. This can lead to a more relaxed and welcoming experience for both parties. Secondly, it prevents misunderstandings. Clear communication helps avoid confusion about check-in/checkout times, house rules, and other important details. This can save you from unnecessary stress and potential problems during your stay. Finally, it enhances your overall experience. Local tips, recommendations, and quick responses to your questions can significantly improve your trip, and all of these rely on effective communication. Now, let's get into the practical side of things. How do you actually communicate with your Airbnb host? Airbnb provides a built-in messaging system that is the primary and preferred method of communication. This system keeps all communication within the platform, which is important for security and documentation purposes. You can access this messaging system through the Airbnb website or mobile app. Once your booking is confirmed, you'll be able to message your host directly. So, when should you start communicating with your host? Ideally, you should initiate contact shortly after booking your reservation. A simple message introducing yourself and expressing your excitement about your upcoming trip is a great way to start. This also gives you an opportunity to confirm any important details, such as your expected arrival time. What kind of information should you communicate? Firstly, provide your estimated arrival time. This helps your host prepare for your arrival and ensures a smooth check-in process. If your arrival time changes, be sure to inform your host as soon as possible. Secondly, communicate any special requests or needs you may have. This could include things like needing a crib for a baby, having specific dietary restrictions, or requiring accessibility accommodations. By communicating these needs in advance, you give your host time to make the necessary arrangements. Thirdly, ask any questions you may have about the property or the local area. Don't hesitate to ask about things like Wi-Fi details, parking information, local transportation options, or recommendations for restaurants and attractions. Now, let's talk about the etiquette of communicating with your Airbnb host. Firstly, be polite and respectful. Remember that your host is likely a busy person, so keep your messages concise and to the point. Use polite language and avoid demanding or entitled behavior. Secondly, be mindful of response times. While it's reasonable to expect a prompt response to urgent questions, remember that your host may not be available 24/7. Avoid sending multiple messages in quick succession and allow them some time to respond. Thirdly, keep communication within the Airbnb platform. As mentioned earlier, this is important for security and documentation purposes. Avoid sharing personal contact information, such as phone numbers or email addresses, unless absolutely necessary. Let's address some common scenarios and how to handle them. What if you have a last-minute change to your arrival time? The key here is to communicate as soon as possible. Send a message to your host explaining the situation and providing your updated arrival time. Even if it's late at night or early in the morning, it's always better to inform your host than to simply show up without warning. What if you have an issue during your stay, such as a broken appliance or a problem with the Wi-Fi? Again, the best approach is to communicate directly with your host through the Airbnb messaging system. Explain the issue clearly and provide any relevant details. This gives your host the opportunity to address the problem promptly and efficiently. What if your host is unresponsive? While this is rare, it can happen. If you've sent a message and haven't received a response within a reasonable time frame, try sending a follow-up message. If you still don't hear back, you can contact Airbnb customer support for assistance. They can help mediate the situation and ensure that your needs are met. Let's talk about some common mistakes to avoid. Firstly, don't wait until the last minute to communicate important information. By communicating early and often, you can avoid misunderstandings and ensure a smooth experience. Secondly, don't assume anything. If you have any questions or concerns, it's always best to ask. Don't assume that something will be provided or that a certain situation will be handled in a particular way. Thirdly, don't use communication for anything other than legitimate inquiries or concerns. Avoid using the messaging system for spam, solicitations, or other inappropriate purposes. Before your trip, it's a good idea to review the house rules and any other important information provided by your host in the listing description. This can help you avoid unnecessary questions and ensure that you're aware of any specific requirements or expectations. After your trip, consider leaving a review for your host. This is a great way to provide feedback on your experience and help other travelers make informed decisions. In your review, you can also mention the quality of communication with your host. A quick recap: communicate early and often. Use the Airbnb messaging system. Be polite and respectful. Be mindful of response times. Keep communication within the platform. Communicate any special requests or needs. Ask any questions you may have. Inform your host of any changes to your arrival time. Communicate any issues during your stay. Review the house rules and listing description. Leave a review after your trip. By following these simple guidelines, you can ensure clear and effective communication with your Airbnb host, leading to a more enjoyable and stress-free travel experience. Remember, communication is a two-way street. By being proactive, respectful, and clear in your communication, you can build a positive relationship with your host and unlock a truly memorable stay. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.